And when we understand that, when we grasp that completely, it will completely change the way that we can define or should define our relationship with Jesus. When you understand it, you begin to see what He wants from us as a follower. He doesn't care that we can quote John 3:16 or the 23rd Psalm. He wants us to know Him personally, have an intimate relationship with Him. I was listening to a program this morning. It was a 20-year-old girl who had dedicated her life to Christ, had served Him for, they didn't say if they did, I didn't get it, for how many years, several years. She and her brother were mountain climbing. Had caught her an avalanche at age 20. She died. Her brother survived. And they found her journal where she had been writing in. And as they read part of her journal, it was clear that this girl had a God of moment with God. She said that she could close her eyes and not see anything and yet see everything. She could give away everything she had and yet be rich. And she went on describing the relationship that she had with the Lord and Savior. She had that intimate relationship. She knew God, and she not only knew about Him, but she knew Him, and she knew what God wanted from her.
Praise the Lord.
Instead of identifying ourselves as a follower because we know about Him, when we understand the meaning of this word know, then we understand that we are a follower because we know Jesus. You get that? Instead of identifying yourself as a follower because we know Him, we understand that we are a follower because we know Him. We don't know Him because we're a follower. We follow Him because we know Him.
Praise God.
Back to our story with the Pharisee. This Pharisee knew all about Jesus, but he didn't know Jesus. He didn't know that this visiting rabbi sitting at his table was the promised Messiah that he had spent hours and hours and hours studying about. And then the thing shifts. Luke tells us that while Jesus is eating at this Pharisee's house, a woman comes on the scene. They were possibly, it doesn't matter where, but they were possibly eating out of doors in a courtyard. People could have heard the conversations going on. But things suddenly turn awkward when this woman comes uninvited up to the table where Jesus and the others were eating. Now, to better understand the conflict, or the tension, I guess would be the best way to put it, to better understand the tension that's going on at this moment, we got to understand that this wasn't just any ordinary woman. Verse 37 says, "And behold, a woman in the city who was a sinner." Who was a sinner. More specifically, the word says that she was a prostitute. Prostitute in the town village. We don't know exactly how this all came about, but apparently she had heard Jesus teaching, maybe earlier that day. And something happened in her heart as she heard it. What was it that Jesus was teaching that had such an impact on her life? Was it forgiveness? Maybe as she sat and listened to Jesus, her eyes swelled with tears as she realized that God had loved her and wanted to forgive her. Was it a message of redemption? Maybe as Jesus spoke, she realized that God could put back the broken pieces of her life. But then again, maybe it wasn't anything that Jesus taught at all. Maybe it was the look in his eye that she caught. Of someone looking at her as a beloved daughter instead of the local center. And perhaps when Jesus finished teaching, she knew that God loved her and he had given up, and that he had not given up on her, even as everyone else probably had. She may have even said to herself something like, maybe it's not too late for me after all. Maybe it's not too late. Maybe even someone like me can follow Jesus. We don't know what she thought. We don't know what she heard. But apparently whatever she heard or whatever she saw, she became so desperate to see Jesus again, and she overheard someone saying that he was going to be having dinner at the home of Simon the Pharisee. A dinner at which she would never, ever be invited to attend. In fact, normally she would have had no interest in attending a dinner at the Pharisee's home. I mean, after all, I'm sure that she had felt the condemnation from Simon and others that were probably at this dinner. She had felt that condemnation in the past. So her attempt was to stay as far away from places like that as possible. But something happened in her life and she had to see Jesus again. She had to see it one more time. Now it's hard for us to imagine what it took for her to walk into that courtyard, or that place where it was that they were having dinner. It's hard for us to imagine. But she was so focused on Jesus that she forgets about herself. She's so desperate to express her feelings, her love and affection for him, that she ignores herself. What she does next is reckless, it's impulsive, and it's inappropriate for the times. But yet it's exactly the thing that Jesus expects from his followers. When was the last time that we did something for Jesus, not caring about ourselves, or how we would be perceived or accepted? Try to get this picture in your mind. They didn't sit around a table with chairs like we do to eat. They sat reclining on a cushion, feet away from the table. This woman approaches and stands at, we don't like to think about this, but at the filthy feet of Jesus. I mean, remember, he'd been walking down in the dust and sand and all, and his feet hadn't been washed when he came into this Pharisee's home. So she comes, she's standing at the filthy feet of Jesus. And all of a sudden the table becomes very silent. Nobody says anything. Everybody's watching. Everybody knows who she is. And everybody's thinking to herself, what is she doing? And she probably looks around at all those people. She feels the glare. She feels the condemnation. Some look at her, some keep their eyes down. Some are embarrassed by her presence there, not sure how to respond. But when she looks in the eyes of Jesus, he knows what has happened in her heart. He knows. And I can just imagine him looking at her and him giving her that warm smile. In fact, he's happy, he's delighted that she has come. And he looks at her as a father would look at a loving daughter when they come into the room. She's had many men to look at her, but she's never had a man to look at her the way Jesus is looking And she is so moved by compassion with what she senses and feels from Jesus that tears start streaming down her face. One here, and here, and another, until finally she just sobs uncontrollably. She falls to the feet of Jesus and she begins to kiss his feet. And as those tears pour down on her face, they begin to drip on the dirty feet of Jesus. And then she sees the muddy streaks and realizes that his feet haven't been washed, as was the custom. She's not about to ask for a towel to dry his feet. So she lets down her hair. How do you know she let down her hair? I'm just going by custom. You see, in those days, women wore their hair up when they were in public. For a woman to wear her hair down in front of a man that was not her husband was considered such an intimate expression that it was literally grounds for divorce, even though she probably was not married. So she probably had her hair up, she let it down in front of Jesus, and I'm sure then that everybody did around that table the same thing, the same way it happens on Christmas service night when we light the tree. Everybody went, but just for a different reason. There are stones. She begins washing the feet of Jesus with her tears, and she dries them with her hair. Luke says she had an alabaster jar of ointment. This was probably a flask that was often worn around the neck as a kind of perfume for women. As you might guess, in her profession, she would like to use a little drop of perfume every now and then. But she doesn't just put a drop or two on him. She's used this on many men many times before. But then she just empties the whole flask. After all, she's not going to eat it anymore. She doesn't eat it. She pours her oil on his feet and she kisses his feet over and over and over. And at the end of the story, Jesus turns back to Simon. He says, Simon, look at this woman kneeling here. When I entered in your home, you didn't offer me water to wash my feet, but she's washed them with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You didn't greet me with a kiss, but from the time I first came in, she's not stopped kissing my feet. You neglected the courtesy of olive oil to anoint my head, and yet she has anointed my feet with perfume. In the end, the religious leader with all the knowledge is the fan. And the prostitute who intimately expressed her love for Jesus is shown to be the follower. Here then is the question that you and I have to ask ourselves. Who am I most like in this story? Who am I most like in this story? The last time with reckless abandonment, without fear of what's going to be said, you did something for Christ.
I know what it's like to think of things I've done and want